Hello everyone, my name is Steven, here with Grantham University's Week 6 of Intro to Public Speaking. This week we're doing the informative speech. This week I'll be talking about the death penalty. The first death penalty laws date back to the 18th century BC in the Code of King Hemibari of Babylon, which codified the death penalty for 25 different crimes. The first death sentence historically recorded occurred during the 16th century BC in Egypt, where the wrongdoer, a member of nobility, was accused of using magic. He was ordered to take his own life. During this time frame, non-nobility was often executed by use of axe. In the 14th century BC, the Hittite Code also prescribed the death penalty. The 7th century BC Draconian Code of Athens made the death penalty the penalty for all crimes committed. In the 5th century BC, the Roman law of the 12 tablets codified the death penalty. Again, the death penalty was different for nobles and non-nobles. The most notorious death penalty of the BC era would have to have been the Greek philosopher Socrates. He was ordered to drink poison for heresy and for corruption of youth. Mosaic laws codified the death penalty as well. In fact, there's evidence that the Jews used very many different and interesting techniques for execution. The most infamous execution of history occurred around 29 AD with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ outside of Jerusalem. About 300 years later, the Emperor Constantine, after converting to Christianity, abolished crucifixion and other cruel penalties in the Roman Empire. In 438 AD, the Code of Theodosius made more than 80 crimes punishable by death. The first recorded execution in the English-American colonies was in 1608 AD, when officials executed George Kendall of Virginia for supposedly plotting to betray the British to the Spanish. In 1612, Virginia's governor, Sir Thomas Dale, implemented the divine, moral, and martial laws that made the death penalty the penalty for even some very mundane crimes, such as stealing grapes, killing chickens, killing dogs or horses without permission, or trading with the Indians. 7 years later, these laws were softened by the Virginians for fear that nobody would settle there. In 1977, just 16 countries had abolished the death penalty for all crimes. By 1988, 35 countries had done so, and another 18 had abolished the death penalty for all but exceptional crimes such as treason. And 27 more were considered abolitionists in practice because they had not carried out an execution in more than 10 years. As of May 2012, over 2/3 of the countries in the world, approximately 141, have now abolished the death penalty. Notable exceptions include the US, Japan, and China. In 2010, at least 527 executions were carried out by at least 23 countries, not including the thousands carried out by China. Death penalty statistics in China are considered state secrets. Iran executed over 252 people, North Korea over 60, and the US executed 43 in 2010. There are currently 31 states that still allow the death penalty. Since 1976, there have been 1,414 executions. The breakdowns of execution by race are as follows: whites, 784, blacks, 491, Hispanic, 115, and those identifying as other, 24. Since 1977, the overwhelming majority of death row defendants have been executed for killing white victims, although African Americans make up about half of all homicide victims. 76% of victims in a death penalty case were white, 15% were black, 7% were Hispanic, and 2% identified as others. Executions since 1976 and the methods they used. 34 states plus the U.S. government used lethal injection as their primary method. 1,239 executions by lethal injection. 158 executions by electrocution. 11 by gas chamber. 3 by hanging. And 3 by firing squad. A lethal injection is normally the combination of 3 drugs. First, sodium thiopental as an anesthetic. Second is panchronium bromide as a paralyzer. And third is potassium chloride to induce cardiac arrest. Ohio performed the first execution ever using a single drug intravenous injection on December 8, 2009. Nebraska was the last state to use electrocution as its primary means of execution. In the February 8, 2008 Nebraska v. Matta decision, the Nebraska Supreme Court ruled that execution by electrocution was unconstitutional. Arizona, California, Missouri, and Wyoming are the only 4 states which authorize the use of the gas chamber as a method of execution. This is as of September 12, 2011. New Hampshire and Washington are the only states that authorize hanging to be used as a form of execution. There are currently over 3,000 inmates on death row awaiting executions. 43% are white, 42% are black, 13% are Hispanic, and 2% are identified as other. Since the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the death penalty in 1976, 82% of all executions have been carried out in the South, 37% in Texas alone. Here are the executions by region. South, 1,148. Midwest, 177. West, 85. Northeast, 4. Texas and Oklahoma, 640. The number of death sentences per year since 1999 has dramatically dropped. In 1999, there was 266 death sentences per year. In 2014, there were 73. The death penalty is not a deterrent. FBI data shows that the 14 states without capital punishment in 2008 had homicide rates at or below the national average. In 2005, the Supreme Court in Roper v. Simmons struck down the death penalty for juveniles. 22 defendants had been executed for crimes committed as juveniles since 1976. A 2009 poll found police chiefs ranked the death penalty last among the ways to reduce violent crimes. The police chiefs also considered the death penalty the least effective use of taxpayers' money. The greatest costs associated with the death penalty occur prior and during trial, not in post-conviction proceedings. Even if all post-conviction proceedings, such as appeals, were abolished, the death penalty would still be more expensive than alternative means. Defense costs for death penalty trials in Kansas averaged $400,000 per case, as compared to $100,000 per case in a trial that did not request the death penalty. A 2011 study in California revealed that the cost of the death penalty in the state had been over $4 billion since 1978. This study considered the pretrial and trial costs, costs of automatic repeal, and state habeas corpus petitions, cost of federal habeas corpus appeals, and the cost of incarceration on death row. In Maryland, the average death penalty case resulting in death sentence cost $3 million. The eventual cost to the taxpayers of Maryland in cases pursued from 1978 to 1999 was $186 million. 5 executions had resulted during that time. Thank you for listening to my informative speech on the death penalty.